Shalom, welcome to the Jewish View. My name is Rabbi Nachman Simon with the Chabad House of Delmer, together with my co-host Mark Cronin, Just Stay White News Service, and jbiztechvalley.com.
Well, Rabbi, we have a return guest here, one of my favorite county legislators. If I have a favorite, he would be my favorite.
39, that's pretty good over there. That's
Bryan Clenahan. He represents the Guilderland area. And welcome back to the Jewish View.
Thank you. I'm very happy to be back.
We must have treated you all right if you want to come back. We're not tough over
No,
here.
I enjoyed the first time a lot, so happy
There
to
you
get
go.
the invite to come back again.
And you've had some, what I like about you is that you actually are productive as a county legislator. You've had some major legislation that, you got passed. You have a passion for certain issions.
Yeah, thank you. I had a pretty productive year last year. It went really
What
well.
are those issues that Mark's talking about?
Sure.
I don't know that much about Albany County. Mark's our reporter. I'm the rabbi, so maybe inform the
Sure.
viewers what are the big issues that you're dealing with.
Last year, I passed 3 local laws in the county. The first was an animal protection piece. Up until late the prior year, the state had preempted the localities from doing any legislation about pet sellers or pet stores or any animal protection, things like that. The governor signed a bill changing that and giving localities the ability to do more protective measures. So Albany County was actually the very first county to do that. So I worked with Gary Demalowitz on this. We were the co-prime sponsors. But
And what does it do?
It creates a whole set of standard of care for animals and pet sellers and breeders. It sets minimum standards of care for feeding, for housing, for care, for exercise.
Because you have found animals in Albany County were malnutritious and being abused in that way, and that maybe a pet owner had too many cats or too many dogs or couldn't take care of horses or something?
Well, I think pet owners kind of fall under the animal cruelty statutes. This was more about sellers and breeders, particularly pet stores. And I think the reality is a lot of the pet stores, and some operate very, very well, but many of them have very questionable standards, and I think that's what we
Which way?
found.
Starving the animals, are you saying?
Animals are underfed. Animals have very little exercise. They're in tiny crates. They get minimal water, if anything, very little food.
How could they sell an animal like that? I mean, it's like cutting off their noses. I mean, if someone sees a emaciated dog, who's going to buy it?
I think it's hard to say it when they're puppies that they all look relatively healthy, but certainly that's been an issue with some pet stores. I think even greater issues with breeders, and there's been problems throughout the country and throughout New York about breeders and the conditions under which they keep the animals, under which they breed the animals. And I spoke about this on the floor, just my own personal experience. My family's had a little Bichon for 8 years now, and she unfortunately came from a breeder. We thought it was a reputable breeder. We found out later it was a breeder for a real reputation for being a puppy mill, and this poor animal she's lovely. You love her if you met her, but she's had any number of illnesses, any number of issues, allergies.
From the beginning, you mean?
Yeah, we did some research on a lot of the issues that she's had are related to overbreeding, which is so common with these breeders.
And the Bichon Frise is a very expensive dog. They're not cheap.
Yeah.
They could be over $1,000.
That's why they breed them so much. Is that? I mean, I'm just trying to get
probably
a person's. Sometimes there's criminal people that just hate people. They beat up people. They beat up dogs. You got their criminal mind. But someone who's a breeder, I'm trying to think. Hey man, you're in the business. You're trying to make money. You're not.
Yeah, I think there are some great breeders and truly reputable breeders, but I think many of them are just in it for the business and just in it to make money and don't care about the conditions of the animals. And there's not a lot of recourse after you buy a pet, so they don't hear from people later who've had problems with the animal. So our approach with the local law was really to try to get this up front and do minimum standards of care, punishments for the breeders if they don't do that, and to really get the county involved on a real basis. The reality was the state had the ability to do these inspections and type of things earlier, but as we found out, this area fell under the State Department of Ag and Markets, and they had, I don't remember the exact number, but something like 5 inspectors for the entire state. So the likelihood of these terrible breeders being inspected was very small. But so now, on a local county basis, we can really make a big difference.
So the county doesn't have an ag and market. So is it the health department who sends someone out, or who does it?
Health department is going to oversee the program. We're kind of figuring out how to implement it now. I'm hoping to have the sheriff involved, and also to work with the municipalities in Albany County that have their own.
The sheriff has a canine unit? Or?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. They know about dogs.
Because they're sensitive towards dogs.
Well, first of all, the sheriff has been great on animal issues, and he's been terrific in helping us implement the animal abuser registry, which is something I did in my first term. But the sheriff's office also serves as the animal control officer in the hill towns because they don't have their own department now. Albany, Colony, Guilderland, And I believe most of the other towns have their own. So our plan is to work with the sheriff in terms of affecting this in the hill towns and work with those individual local animal
You know what,
departments
just
in the
as one
towns
the
in the
Jewish
city.
view, I'm the rabbi, I just want to give the Jewish perspective. And even though, like you say, it's cutting edge, you're in the 21st century, obviously, but Judaism 3,300 years ago says there's actually a commandment, a negative commandment. It's in Hebrew, Tsar Balachaim, the painting of an animal. So here, I always just think, Judaism people say, well, that's ancient law, but on the other hand, it's cutting edge in a lot of areas where when it comes to morals and ethics, and that's what I'm saying, it's not just to human beings, but there is the commandment that you shouldn't hurt animals like this.
Right, absolutely.
And what was another bill that you were working on?
The second one we did last year was a new cyberbullying statute, which we had passed a cyberbullying statute back in 2011, I believe, that the Court of Appeals found unconstitutional. So I read the Court of Appeals decision, which fortunately gave us a pretty good roadmap as to what would be permissible constitutionally to them, and I wrote a new bill based on that. And that passed, I believe, nearly unanimously. So there's now a cyberbullying statute back in place, much narrowly tailored. It only applies to minors. It's very clear about the kind of speech that is punished under this to address any freedom of speech concerns. But I think the reality is there has to be some kind of cyberbullying statute. Cyberbullying frankly can be as harmful as regular bullying, and we have all manner of statutes to deal with that. I think we need to update our laws to address the reality of the 21st century, that cyberbullying is frankly what bullying was when I was a kid.
I don't know, that's what I'm saying. We had kids bullying all the time. I mean, that's probably from the beginning of time. But on the other hand, what exactly is it? With someone on the email saying you're an idiot, or I don't even know what it is.
Keep it clean, Bryan.
Yeah. I won't use examples. I think what we tailored it was, and based on the Court of Appeals concerns, we tailored it to sexually explicit things,
Really?
images, real hate speech type of things, real attacks on character in terms of morality,
And it gets over to all their friends, meaning to,
right.
like on the Facebook or something, then it gets...
Right. That would be part of the crime, would be a mass publication of it over a period. So it's a period of conduct, and I think that was another concern the Court of Appeals had. It would be overbroad if it was just one act, but we tailored it so it applies to a series of acts of hate speech or real speech without any value, in terms of constitutionally speaking.
Mm-hmm.
Very good.
And the third bill, you said you had three.
Third one was a Toxic Toy Act.
Oh,
So
okay.
there's been a toxic toy.
I thought that was your bill.
That was mine, yeah.
Okay.
There's been a Toxic Toy Act in the state legislature for many years now. It's passed the Assembly, 7 or 8 times. It never passes the Senate. What we decided to do is on a local level do something a little bit more finely honed. The state bill is complicated. It bans toys and children's products with certain chemicals, but it also has a clearinghouse for chemicals to be added and subtracted later based on analysis by the Department of Health. What we decided to do on the county level is just to basically do a straight ban on any children's products that contain some of the most harmful chemicals, like cadmium, arsenic, lead, things like that.
Like a doll or something that a kid will put in their mouth?
Yeah, any kind of toy or any kind of children's product, really. So what we found were a lot of the things, and the advocates Clean Healthy New York did a lot of work on this and actually went to Albany County store shelves to see what kind of products were out there, and they found a lot of jewelry type of things, a lot of keychain type of things, a few other types of toys had cadmium, mercury, lead, all kinds of harmful chemicals.
Because the stuff with food, is this mainly from China? Did you find out? I mean,
That's exactly what I was thinking. I was thinking exactly the same thing.
I think, unfortunately, it was a lot of products made in China.
Because I know there was food products that they found that there was bad things in the food, so I'm just thinking
I think we found a lot of products.
A lot of third world.
So are these cheaper chemicals, and it's a cheaper way to make the product by using these chemicals? I mean, why would they even think of, cadmium, I think of a battery.
Right.
I think of lead as being maybe in the 60s paint-based,
Right.
But we all know that lead is not good for you. It slows cognitive growth and all that. But and I know the issue of toxic toys. I've seen enough.
It's probably cheaper. Maybe it's just cheaper to
Well,
use.
that's what I'm wondering.
I think that is the case.
Their labor in China is cheaper. Now they want the product themselves of the way they manufacture the products to be cheaper. I mean,
Yeah, I think it is an economic issue, and it's cheaper made products, and I think it also kind of got it to be a bit of an environmental economic justice issue, in that these cheaper products with these harmful chemicals were more often found in stores that served low-income neighborhoods. And
see, I always thought that if you clamp down on, China making these toys cheaper, and these companies would say, well, we can't make them any cheaper than in the United States, so we might as well just keep them, make them at home,
Right.
and not overseas. So I'm
Yeah.
thinking this is very good for our economy if you just, whatever they're using in their products, you may not have thought about this when you initially, it might have been from an environmental or a health standpoint, but it's an economic standpoint for us in that it may bring some of the manufacturing jobs back to the United States.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Honestly, yes, the health of children and the environmental issues were the number one, but I think that would be a fantastic side effect if that were to happen.
I mean, I just also think, just like we were talking about food products and even pollution products. I mean, I just put in a word for the United States. I'm personally grateful for living in a country,
Absolutely.
is free and is open and clean,
Yeah.
literally. And I mean, it's just the mindset of third world countries. They pollute waters. You hear about the world. The streams are totally polluted. The air is polluted. And, I don't know if I don't think they have the same value for human health and human life as we do in the United States.
Yeah, I think you may be right.
So where is that toxic toys? I mean, it passed, but when is it going to be implemented? What's the next step?
It was 1 year from signature, and it was signed early January, so early next year.
Okay.
I was hoping to time it a little bit before the holidays next year, but
Oh, that's right. Not after the holidays, before the holidays.
right.
Yeah, that would have
But
been
I
nice.
think realistically, any
You
stores.
got to get the stores to get it off their shelves,
Yeah.
so they just don't lose money. And
Well, that's just it. We wanted to give them time to implement it and really get it up and going. So I think that was a fair amount of time to do it. But so we were actually the first county in New York State to do this, and I think
others have come along.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Really very interesting.
Suffolk.
I think sometimes it takes
Yeah.
one person. Well, if it's good enough for you, everybody falls
Or
into
they use
place.
they use the template from the legislation
Yeah.
to
Right.
model
and
it
it passed
after
the courts,
their
so they
counties.
see it's good.
Right. Suffolk County has introduced a pretty similar thing. Westchester, I believe, also. I know I spoke to a legislator in Dutchess who was interested in doing it. So I think it's catching on. But this
Getting
was the
there.
very end of last year. We passed it late December at our first
So
December
it takes
meeting.
time
So
to get
it's
through the system.
still pretty new. So, but hopefully
Yeah.
more counties will get involved. But I think
Yeah.
Suffolk may be the furthest along. I know it's out of committee there, so hopefully they'll be moving soon too.
Your colleague in the Albany County Legislature, Chris Higgins, is his father still the majority leader in the Dutchess
I don't
County?
think so. No, I don't think so. Actually,
That's
flipped.
could be you're in,
right? No, I think that flipped parties actually.
They flip parties.
I think so.
Well, he's not in there.
Right.
Okay.
But so I think we did acknowledge that this was our primary
Yeah.
goal was to keep Albany County residents safe and keep kids safe in Albany
Okay,
County.
so-
Obviously, it's a little bit difficult if you have other counties who have these products, and I think our real long-term goal would be to kind of force a statewide bill. And if there's a patchwork of counties that are doing this, I think it makes the likelihood of a statewide bill greater. So hopefully that's the long-term goal.
I wanted to ask you about downsizing the legislature. How do you stand on that? What are your feelings? What are your thoughts?
I support it. I think that there are cases to be made against it, and I don't want to downsize too much, but I think a reasonable downsize from 39 to say 29 or maybe 25 would be reasonable. You don't want districts that are too small. When the districts are too big or bigger, you have two problems there. It's a little harder to represent the people because you have that many more constituents, and two, when you have to run in a district that's fairly large, you have to raise more money, and I don't think anybody wants to see more money come into these races. Our districts right now are 7,500 to 8,000. They're pretty compact. And the reality is with a district of that size or a district of up to, say, 10,000, you can get to know your constituents pretty well. You can know most of the folks. And you can run a campaign that's grassroots based. You don't need a ton of money. You can walk your district. You can work pretty hard. So I'm in favor of downsizing to a pretty reasonable degree. I think I've heard numbers out there to downsize to 15 or something like that.
Yeah, but
I think that's too much.
But 29 is what I think is what everyone's going to agree upon, but it won't take effect till 2023.
Right. Per the state law, and I think there's some debate on this, but my understanding is we can't do a redistrict except based on a census.
Right.
So we would have to wait till the next census came out. The first time we'll stand for election or re-election after the next census comes out is 2023, so that'd be the plan then. But
And you would be in your third or fourth term by then, and
we'll see.
you know. Well, the
I
reason
may be retired by then.
Well, that's why I'm asking, because, it seems like if you do the calculus on all this, there might be 10 seats that, there are people who've done their time, want to move on.
Right.
They say, instead of pitting one county legislator against another, whether they're the same party or opposite parties, you're still pretty friendly in the county legislature, and they seat, everyone is seated by district number, so you could be seated next to a Republican. It's not like the state legislature where the Democrats are on one side for the most part and Republicans are on the other.
Right.
You just seated District 1, 2, 3, 4, et cetera. So I don't know who your partner is, if it's Patrice or Lockhart or who is
No,
it?
I'm a big fan of Patty. I think she's a great legislator. No, I'm next to Travis Stevens from Altamont and Knox.
And he's a Republican?
He's a Republican.
Yeah.
I think an excellent legislator.
No big deal, right? You don't say, oh, you Republican, conservative,
No, I really have a lot of respect for a lot of colleagues on both sides of the aisle. And actually, one of the things I'm going to do this year is a local law to allow the use of sparklers in the county, which was also a state thing that now the localities have the ability to opt in on. And I told my Republican friends that I'm gonna finally do a pro-business thing, and I'd love to have them on it. Because usually I'm doing environmental stuff.
Just like a fireworks.
A sparkler, yeah.
Sparklers,
so
just safe, relatively safe sparklers, yeah.
Yeah.
But it's against law right now, you mean?
It is. Last year, the state passed a bill that allowed local counties to opt in if they want to sell them. Most of our counties surrounding us are going to be doing this. Their bills are already in process. So I think I would like to see Albany County do it so we can get some of the tax revenue. But two, Connecticut did this a few years ago, and what they found was there was a dramatic increase in the number of accidents or incidents of other fireworks when people had sparklers. So
Once they have sparklers, they just buy everything.
Yeah. Once they have sparklers, there's much less need for real dangerous things, bottle rockets, things like that. So I think hopefully in Albany County, if we pass this, we'll see a similar.
Because these are the things that you just kind of,
it's fine.
And in less than 2 minutes, it's done.
Right. No, if even,
Yeah, that's what I mean. So it's.
Mark was saying, well, you're going into the future. You have any bigger plans? You're still a young guy over here.
You're how old now?
I will be 44 in May.
So you got a big career ahead of you. I mean, you look for anything more? I mean, in your own idea? Looks like you're a professional, legislator. You're doing a lot of good work. So people would come up and look at you and, hey, maybe you
I
get
just
a better
mentioned this
position.
briefly. He works in the state senate,
Right.
so that's it.
Well, he's
I'll
not
just
a
say that.
senator over here.
Right.
No, we're not going to go further. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. Who knows? We'll see what happens.
There's opportunities have to come up also.
Yeah, there
No,
may
he
be.
has to
but-
have the willingness, the opportunity to come up, but he may not want to run for a countywide office or something like that. I mean, we're just curious.
Yeah, it's something I would consider. We'd have to see.
We're
what
always
comes
looking
up.
for a scoop over here.
Sure. I don't have any.
The first
Let me
one.
ask you-
I don't have any reveals, but no, I've enjoyed the county right now, and I think I've been able to get some good things through. I've enjoyed that. I kind of know the folks and the atmosphere there, so I've enjoyed it. So if something else comes up, maybe, but I'm pretty happy right now.
Are you on good terms with the county executive, or are you supporting his primary opponent?
I have not taken a position yet.
Okay. So it's just you're sort of in between with the current county executive? I mean,
I think
I
we
don't know.
get along okay. I
Okay,
think
yeah.
all the local laws I've passed, he's signed, so I've been okay with that. But
all right.
yeah, I'm kind of watching right now. It's a crazy year. I haven't entirely decided if I'm going to run again myself, so I'm leaning towards it, but I haven't fully
It's
decided.
always
so.
in the odd years. Albany County is the odd years.
We're every 4.
Right,
But
every
it's
four,
every-
but it's always
every
in an
four
odd
odd,
year.
Odd year.
So
Right.
this is 2015, so everyone's up for re-election.
Yeah, we run every 4. To be honest, how folks in Congress and the state legislature run every 2 years, I cannot tell you. To try to have to raise that kind of money every 2 years, it's just not good for the system.
Approximately how much does it cost you to run a county legislative race?
Hard to say.
No, I know, but is it 2,000? Is it 20,000? Is it? I mean, that's why I'm asking a ballpark. I mean,
It really depends on your district.
I mean, you don't do
I have a-
TV. You don't do
Right.
TV ads.
That helps.
You don't do radio.
Right.
A lot of it is print material
Right.
and emails and social media. So, and buying a lot of pairs of shoes because it's a
Sure.
grassroots campaign, so
Right.
shoe leather campaign. So I'm just curious. I mean, do you do fundraisers, or does it come out of your own pocket, or?
I have in election years, and if I decide to run again, I'll probably do a couple this year. It depends kind of on the district. You know, I'm in Guilderland.
Right.
I may have a Republican opponent. If you're a city legislator, the likelihood of a Republican opponent is not great. So
Right.
if you have a race, it'd be a primary, which is a much smaller voter universe. You know, for folks where you have generals, the costs are a little higher because you have to mail to different parties and different folks. So I don't know. You could in a primary, maybe you could run a good race for 5,000 or so. I think otherwise, maybe up to 10 or 15.
Okay.
I don't know if you need to go beyond that. You can run a very competitive race with that.
With
but
15,000.
yeah, but your mailing costs you have to worry about. You got to do a lot of signs.
Right. So that's why I'm asking
Yeah.
approximately, so the viewers know whether they want to, what they want to do. You know,
Right.
if they want to run in.
Run
you know,
against Bryan over here?
Well,
He
but,
doesn't want
you
the
know,
competition over
Well,
here.
because in the city of Albany, I used to get candidates to run against the Democrats all the time. And yeah, and they were very, you know, they were basically running as a distraction so the incumbent doesn't give his resources to other more challenging races. So you keep the Democrats busy,
Yeah.
and then you go ahead and and the others have to fend for themselves without the support of the others. So, you know, I think that we need a two-party system, and I think that it's important not just to have, you know, like the Albany Common Council, where you only have, you know, one party and they don't have a minority leader.
Yeah, you know, in the suburbs, it's like a multi-party system because obviously Democrats and Republicans, but independents, conservative, to a lesser degree, working families, and to probably an equal degree, green, are all factors in the suburbs.
Well, I think the Albany County, you know, Rich Mendick is a conservative,
Right.
enrolled conservative. He sits with the Republicans. Don't you have an independence party guy from Cohoes, or you used to have someone from Cohoes that was?
I think Sean Morse was actually
An independence
independent,
party?
and he changed to Democrat.
To
But yeah, I believe
Democrat.
he was elected on the independence line.
Okay, so that was, you know,
Right.
so they do have other issues, you know.
Yeah, and I've always run every time with the Independence Party, and they've been. I think they're a great force. I think they
Yeah,
really.
but you're an enrolled
Yes.
Democrat,
Yep.
so, you know, you just pick up the other, do you have a working families
I had
party
working
line, or-
families last time.
You don't do conservative party, right? No, that's not your thing. Okay.
I'm not sure I'm their thing.
Well, okay, you know, but no,
I have a lot of respect for the county chair, but for
the
for
conservative,
staff,
the
but-
Conservative Party says to you when you go in to ask for their endorsement, are you going to take another line like a working families party or whatever? And if you say yes to that, then they don't endorse you. They don't want you to have, you know, the more liberal leanings and be endorsed by parties that are more liberal. So that's one of the things that but they do endorse a lot of Democrats, which is
Right.
why I've asked you if you,
Right.
you know, and people who have ideologies that are against conservative principles, but because of politics, as it is a political party,
Sure.
Richie Stack, who's the county Conservative Party chairman, does endorse Democrats who don't necessarily agree with the Conservative Party. He just does it for whatever reason, other reasons.
Right. Another interesting thing is the Green Party, because
Yeah.
the Green Party, based on the strong showing in last year's governor's race, they're going to be the fourth ballot line, but they will not endorse anyone not in the Green Party. The other third parties endorse major party candidates who, you know, hold their values, but the Greens are pretty pure that way. So that's going to be an interesting thing. You know, that's going to be the fourth ballot line, and they're probably not going to endorse too many local people.
Yeah, your district has which neighborhoods?
I'm Westmere and Guilderland, so I'm
Okay.
right
So
about
you're-
the ramp to get on the Northway west to 155
Right,
and 20.
and you're down to the border line of by the SUNY campus, or?
That's McCownville. That's one over.
That's McCownville, so that's Mary
I stop
Lou.
right at Stuyvesant Plaza.
Oh, okay, so by Fuller Road?
Right.
Okay. And have you been to Shopper's House yet?
Sure.
Oh, okay,
Sure.
good.
Old
Big.
and new.
Oh, then,
Sure.
okay. So because, is that part of your district, or is that Mary Lou?
That's Mary Lou.
That's Mary
That's
Lou.
Mary Lou
It's right on the
County,
border, that's why I'm asking,
Yeah.
yeah. So.
But no, I have been there. I mean, the new place looks phenomenal.
Yeah, yeah.
Not that new anymore. It's been there about 5 years, right?
Yeah, you're
Exactly,
right.
Yeah.
exactly. Well, it's
Relatively new.
new to some.
Compared to all these synagogues are 100 years old
Right.
in the capital district. So
So, do you hope that your district change? Do you like the compactness of your district, or do you, think that there should be, if they do downsize to 29, where should your district expand to? Do you have a preference, even if you're not in the legislature, just as a Guilderland resident, do you have a preference as to which way the district should expand to?
I'm not sure I'd say a preference, but just because even before the legislature, I was involved in Guilderland politics a lot, and I was involved in a couple positions in the town, so I'm pretty familiar with McCownville to the east of me, and the Dockshaw Road area to the south. So I really like all those neighborhoods. I think Altamont's a beautiful neighborhood. I don't have any preference, but I'm pretty familiar with a lot of the Guilderland neighborhoods. I think a lot of them would fit pretty neatly in with Westmere, so I think it could make sense. But yeah, Westmere is very compact, my district, because I have a lot of houses, but I have a few pretty major apartment complexes where there's a lot of folks. So it's
one of which you live in.
One of which I live in. So geographically, I'd say it's a little smaller than a lot of the other districts. Obviously, we're all about the same number of people, but I've got a lot of folks in maybe 5 pretty big complexes there.
Mm-hmm.
So it is compact. It's nicely walkable, so that's a good thing.
And you have a commercial strip in your district, Western Avenue. So
Sure.
And that's a commercial. So you were saying pro-business. So I guess you're getting support from those folks, and you have Stuyvesant Plaza in your district.
Well,
and
Stuyvesant's Mary Lou. I'm right up to there.
You're up to there.
But I've got
Okay.
Crossgates. So I've got the big
Okay,
one.
Crossgates. Yeah. Okay.
I think because I was, before in the legislature, I was chair of the zoning board and I was counsel of the zoning board. And, we had a few big development projects there. The Walgreens on the corner of 155 and 20 was there when I was zoning board chair. I think the approach that I've tried to take is I like development. I like increasing the tax base. I think it's good for the taxpayers, but it's got to be sensible. I don't want to criticize any of the municipalities, but there's some busy strips in other parts of Albany County. It would take you an hour to get from one end to the other. I don't want to see Western Avenue like that. I don't want to see it over-trafficked. I don't want to see it overdeveloped. But to the degree that we can do pretty reasonable, sensible development, I think that makes sense for the people.
And you don't want it to look like Lower Central Avenue either.
I
where there are a lot of boarded up or closed businesses.
I remember being there as a kid because I grew up in Albany, and my grandmother was on Clinton Avenue. I would go over to the stores on Central Avenue. There was a great comic book store, which was a little lower on Central Avenue. So I remember being there all the time. I remember being there a little younger on St. Patrick's Parade Day and going to Paulie's Hotel. And
That's right.
yeah, that was a great stretch at one time. And I see I hope it's coming back a little bit. I think WAMC has made a lot of investment there. The concert hall there is great. So I think there's been some coming back from that strip. But
do you have any thoughts about the Washington Avenue Armory and what's been going on with there? I don't know if it's more of a city issue than a county issue, but it could be a county issue.
I think it's a city issue, but that event a couple weeks ago was definitely quite a concern. If you're going to have a concert venue, you really have to have adequate security.
Well, it seems like since they closed Cocapelli's in Troy that they all moved over to the Washington Avenue Armory,
Right.
and all of a sudden we have the problems that Cocapelli's had in Troy.
Yeah, the Armory's a great venue too. And getting back to being a kid in Albany again, I remember going to Patroons games when I was a kid with my dad, and it was a great place. And they redid it kind of a couple of years ago when the Patroons had a brief comeback. It's really a nice venue.
You got to get the Patroons back. I went to my kids there.
They were great.
Too.
It was a blast.
Wish they'd have the basketball team over here.
Yeah.
It's a private money, I guess.
Where do you see the town of Guilderland growing and coming to the next level in terms of economy, or in terms of the businesses, in terms of that?
I think there's still a good amount of development. There's still some good space. The further out Western Avenue, west on Western Avenue that you get, I think there's some real opportunity to develop out there. There's a lot of space. I think the tricky thing is an area like Westmere and McCownville, we don't want to overdevelop. You want it to be reasonable for the residents. You want the traffic to be reasonable.
Pine Bush?
Yeah.
Is that in your district?
Pine Bush, no. Pine Bush crosses over into Albany. I think that may be over the Albany border.
Well, I know that Crossgates took over the Pine Bush.
Right.
So I know that there was some Pine Bush. If you represent Crossgates, you did have Pine Bush.
Yeah.
So I thought maybe there was still some of it left in your district.
No, because that's a weird strip geographically, because Albany is all Washington Avenue Extension. So you got this weird kind of rod that goes all the way out Washington Avenue Extension. That's the city of Albany. It kind of wraps around Guilderland. So we're bordered by that on the north. But
Okay.
yeah, I think there's real development opportunity. But I think the other thing about Guilderland as a whole is it's very diverse. There's a lot of business, there's a lot of residents, but there's agricultural and small village part two in Altamont. I think it's important to maintain that.
Brian, we're out of time, but I'm glad you came back, and you'll have to come
I
back
can talk half the
again.
night. I would love to.
All
Thank
right,
you.
very good. In any case, keep it going, man. Do have success with whatever you're doing, and do it with good health.
All right,
Yes,
thank
thank
you.
you.
Thank you for having me.